Hi Taurus. I'm recording this with my microphone, but I'm filming it on my MacBook, so hopefully I match up the audio and the video to look very cohesive. I'm in my new office and the heating is very loud, so until I figure out how to muffle the noise, we're gonna have to do it this way. This is your December 2023 forecast. As far as December goes, I'm excited for it. I think it's a little bit one foot in, one foot out. There's a Mercury retrograde. Mercury is in Sag and it doesn't always love being there. We have some energy going from Scorpio to Sag to Capricorn, so I think by the end of the month we're going to be having that serious, sort of motivated, disciplined, direct approach to things as we head into the new year, like how we start to come up with our resolutions. Mainly for you guys, everything is kind of on the third quadrant of your chart. So we're moving from your relationship sector to now the upper hemisphere of your chart, where you overlap with other people, your thoughts, your beliefs, your career, all those things, your friendships as well, start to come into focus a little bit more. So without further ado, I'm going to give you all the dates to keep an eye on. On the 1st of December, we have Mercury entering into your 9th house. So Mercury is the planet of speaking, talking, writing, using your voice, self-expression. It's details, it's communication, it's all of these smaller, more, details that are mundane and overlooked, but are certainly very important and necessary to kind of keep a well-oiled machine moving in our lives. So to have that go into your 9th house is going to bring basically your ideas, your conversations, and what's going on up here to focus on, traveling, faith, philosophy, education, new opportunities, getting outside of your comfort zone, exploring like bigger horizons, uncharted territory. It has a lot to do with faith, it has a lot to do with your beliefs, but it's also your general understanding of things and your personal philosophy based off of your experiences. So this can look like taking a short trip, it can look like going on vacation for the holidays, it can look like just going like out of the city, hanging out with friends that you haven't seen all year, or just getting into reading again, self-help books, really, coming into your beliefs and like your practices a little bit more. You deal with it every single year, so it's not anything that you haven't experienced before. It's nothing rare. On the 3rd, Venus is going to be in your 6th house. It's going to be leaving it, and then before it, heads into your 7th house, makes its ingress, it's going to square Pluto in your 9th house. So squares, I always say, aren't the worst thing in the world. They just are uncomfortable, and that friction is usually to inspire some sort of action or decision or change. It's not just like annoying for no reason. So to have a square between Venus and Pluto is usually going to be collectively a lot of intensity between things like love, finances, relationships, partnerships. To have that between your 6th house and your 9th house could be a disagreement between what's going on at work or your lifestyle, your habits, your very mundane, like everyday tasks and productivity, even things like your pets, the food that you eat, your workout routine, for some reason conflicting with or adding some, friction with your 9th house of your belief system, your faith, your education, maybe even like authority figures. It could be something with a boss, it could be issues with coworkers, it could be the distance of your job or of things that are in your everyday life for some reason, like not being as cohesive, as smooth as they typically are. I would say that there can just be, again, some intensity between work, health, habits, opportunities, or maybe people that you work with are in charge of you, or that you have to look up to, like a professor, a boss, somebody that maybe calls the shots in some way. On the 4th, maybe there's even issues with traveling and work, to be clear. On the 4th, Venus is going to enter your 7th house. So the next day, it's going to be heading into your relationship sector. Venus going through the 7th house is always exciting. This is really good for relationships. It's really good for meeting somebody new. I usually would say that this is less about honeymoon stage and dating, somebody that you just met, like going on a blind date, and usually like someone that you're already with now becomes a little bit more serious and committed to you. This is really good for any sort of like business deals, agreements, contracts to be signed, anything where you need to work together with somebody in collaboration or sort of cooperate with one another to address like a shared goal, and being on the same page about that brings some ease to partnerships, clients, people that are just, that you share interpersonal relationships with. On the 5th, Venus in your 7th house in that same area is going to trine Saturn in your 11th house. So Saturn is the planet discipline, responsibility, commitment, hard work, grit, patience, all of the things that we don't really like doing, but that we know are like wise and necessary to see the value in something in a big way. Venus, on the other hand, is like money, relationships, joy, pleasure, indulgence. It's really all the things that, give us temptation or just feel warm and cozy in a very easy way. So Saturn and Venus together, when we have a positive aspect like this, is very beneficial, because it's saying you get to feel good, but you also have that like side of you that's saying, I'm doing it the right way, or I'm not sacrificing my responsibilities or my commitments just to feel good. It's less about instant gratification and more about like, I've worked very hard for this, or my hard work is paying off. So to have that between your 7th house of relationships and then your 11th house, which is also very social, having to do with your social network, with like your actual social media accounts, with your friendships, your groups, communities that you're a part of, the people that you network with even professionally. It's your bigger dreams, it's your goals, it's sort of how other people support you. Having a positive aspect here, really good for support from other people pouring into you. And when I say support, it can look like your friends rooting you on for like a professional project you're working on, or you have like a huge TikTok account and you post your product and you get a lot of sales from like all the people that follow you. It's sort of like other people kind of giving you the thing that you need to have this, pull off what is this successful relationship or collaboration with somebody. It's manifestations. It's really good for like opportunist networking as well. On the 7th, Neptune is going to station direct in your 11th house. It's been retrograde since June 30th. This is usually going to look different for everybody because it's an outer planet. It's not always an influence that everybody notices like very strongly in their lives. I would say it's more something that in hindsight you can be like, oh, during those months I was experiencing this. It's not something that always slaps you right in the face unless it's touching on a planet in your chart. It's aspecting something pretty prominent to you personally, but having it go direct. So since it's been retrograde since June 30th, see if there's anything you can identify specifically in your 11th house. So again, friends, community, social media, the people that you surround yourself with, your sense of the belonging in the world on a larger scale. So if there's anything that you can identify since June 30th that's changed in that particular area of your life, it's likely to resume like regularly scheduled programming as it stations direct again. For some people, this can be like a very intuitive sense of who you should be surrounding yourself with, like what friends can come with you moving forward, where you feel that you belong, whether that's a group, a community, an organization, a political party. Like it can really be anything across the board. It can also be where you feel like there might be deception or manipulation or secrecy or things that are kind of hidden behind the curtain with friendships and the people that you're surrounding yourself by. It's a very spiritual planet, but it can just be very deceptive as well. So you want to lean into the positive aspects of like, wow, I feel like I'm aligning with people that share the same vision as me and can get me closer to my dreams, rather than I feel like everyone around me are people that I can't really trust, and there's just always something hidden that I really never know what the truth is.
Guys, I love how I was like, I'm recording this on my phone and I didn't even press record. I'm sorry for the audio. I was going to re-record all of it, but I don't like to do that because then I feel like I miss details. So here we are. It probably sounds a million times better this way. Where were we? On the 10th, we have Venus in your 7th house, and that's going to be opposite Jupiter in your 1st house. So this is really beautiful. It's a really good day. It's a really good day of good luck, of things just like going in your favor for, again, people across the board. But to have this between you, who you are as a person, who you are, what you look like, your identity in regards to your relationships and the people closest to you, it's very good and romantic for like taking somebody out on a date, proposing to somebody, making that commitment, taking it up to the next step with somebody romantically. It can also be really good with making a business or a financial deal. I would say sometimes worst case scenario is like this can be a little overinflated. It's like I don't want to say too good to be true. It's just like you can talk a big game and maybe not deliver it. You can be too boastful about something. You can be functioning in excess, like spending too much money, overeating, having a little bit too much of the good stuff, which doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It can literally just look like you having what is that really good day where it's like maybe go a little bit on a shopping spree, or maybe you and your date, like we're just going to go to dinner and then you end up going to the movies and then you go get dessert and then you go get drinks, like things like that. It can be very good for excess in a positive way, like taking an extra piece of cake, but very beautiful day for connections, engagements, establishing connections, and taking it seriously as well. On the 12th, there's going to be a new moon in your 8th house. So this is new beginnings, a new chapter starting, a opening of the door, a new cycle that's beginning in your 8th house, which has a lot to do with how we overlap with other people and how we're tethered to other people energetically, financially, romantically, and the inner transformation we have even when we separate from people through something like a breakup or death or loss or separating our assets in some way. So usually the 8th house is going to be more complicated finances. I always say this is less about giving your friend $20 and more about like taking out a loan from the bank. That is your relationship with the bank, and now there's like this kind of back and forth of debt, of sharing, of trust that is shared between the two of you. So to have a new beginning here can look like you investing in a shared investment with something that involves somebody else, whether that's like you signing a lease with somebody that is going to be a roommate that you're living with, or signing a marriage contract, or moving in with somebody, or like paying your taxes off or something like that. Having a new beginning here is kind of opening the door to, okay, we're starting a new chapter with personal transformation, intimacy, kind of strengthening the bond, or tightening the cord between you and somebody, or you and something else. That can be, again, a person, an institution, like an establishment, an institution. It could be that as well, honestly, because the 8th house is also very intense. It has a lot to do with like both literal and metaphorical death. So if there's any dealings with somebody that's recently passed in your life, you can see a new financial beginning here based off of something that they've, put in their will for you, or their trust, or their estate, inheritances, anything like that. But I would say that it can be a deep new beginning, like kind of a intense one, but it can be very cathartic, and it's like you're getting deeper with yourself or other people. On the 13th, Mercury retrograde is in your 9th house. So it's going to station retrograde on the 13th. Mercury retrograde is not the worst thing in the world. People really make it sound like it's just here to piss you off. It's not. It's here to help you. Any sort of delays or setbacks or obstacles that come up on your path are to help you. They're not just to like bother you. You want to see it as an opportunity to take advantage of extra time, or another chance or opportunity to something that you missed before, or a little bit more room to work with, like, okay, how can I look at this deeper and look at the details deeper before moving forward? So to have this in your 9th house, it can be setbacks or reconsiderations with your education, traveling, opportunities, or your philosophy on life, and also like spirituality. So I would say to have a Mercury retrograde here, you might be backstepping or like retracing your steps when it comes to why you think or why you believe the things that you believe and where the source of them came from. This can be something as intense as like, oh my God, why do I believe in like the religious thing that I believe in, or like my spirituality? What is my faith in the world, or in myself, or in the way that the world works based off of my experiences? It can be going back to school. It can be that maybe you finished school, but there's something where you needed to send a form in to this person, and now you got to go back and be like, oh my God, who am I emailing this to? Like, it can be very annoying frustrations with like details, communication, things that are, again, like often easy or overlooked, but now it's like they're becoming a little bit more complicated. You just want to be patient with yourself with this sort of transit. There can be like delays if you're taking a flight and traveling, or there can be some changes to like the actual window of time that you're going on vacation. There can be some miscommunications in the way that you share your ideas or your beliefs with people. I don't think that this is going to be anything that's like way too intense for you. It's going to actually change signs in a few days from now too, so we're going to cover this again in a second. But on the 17th, the sun in your 8th house is going to square Neptune in your 11th house. So you really want to trust your gut when it comes to dealings with other people, especially financially, and making sure that things are in writing, because now Mercury is retrograde. You want to make sure that any sort of a deal or agreement or details that are being worked out between you and somebody else, especially if it's like important and an investment, that it's on paper, it's recorded, that way you can refer back to it. And if it's going to put you in trouble that something is recorded, like, you want to triple check everything before you send it. You want to make sure that you're not adding something to cart 3 times in a row. You want to make sure that you're shipping something to the right address. You want to make sure that you're not screenshotting your conversation and sending it to the wrong person. But to have this to have have the sun here and squaring Neptune, usually for everybody, it's going to be a little bit of a deceptive day. In some ways, it can be uncomfortably spiritual, like where it propels you into like this deep sort of place in your mind and in your heart. But usually it's going to be something where you kind of need to be aware of like trickery, manipulation. If it's not malicious, it's just like something isn't as it seems here. There's something that is a little bit cloudy. Maybe your vision isn't entirely accurate on something. Maybe you're not being told the, right information for something that you're dealing with. So to have this between your 8th house of what you share with other people, finances and trust, and then your 11th house of all these people who are supposedly supporting you, or your sense of belonging in the world, your friendships, your network, things like that. You just want to try to put off contracts or investments if you can when it comes to like signing your name, but just be weary of like who you're in business with, basically who you're shaking hands with, who is saying like you guys are on the same page with. On the 22nd, the sun is going to leave your 8th house and it's going to ingress into your 9th house. So this is now going to illuminate and bring attention and warmth and creativity and ego and authority to, again, the 9th house of traveling, faith, philosophy, education, all of that. So we already had Mercury enter here on the 1st, and now we have the sun joining the party. This is what I mean when I say all the planets are going from this area of your chart that has to do with like your close relationships and people around you, and now it's becoming a little bit more public. It's becoming a little bit more prominent in your external world, in your external life. So again, this can look like traveling, it can look like reading more, it can look like sharing your opinions more, it can look like sort of like anything in regards to education. And when I say that, I think, it's not so black and white. I'm not saying you're enrolling back in college. It can be that you take a course or somebody tells you, I learned how to do this thing, and you start to learn from them. It's any sort of like mentorship, somebody teaching you something, you being the student or teacher of life, both literally and metaphorically. It can be any sort of thing where you're just expanding your knowledge on something. And I think having the sun here, you're a Taurus rising, so the sun rules your 4th house of home and family. It can have something to do with your father figure, with men in general. Maybe that's who you're traveling to see. Anything like that can be very prominent here. On the 23rd, the next day, Mercury retrograde, it's already retrograde, it's been retrograde since the 13th, is going to retrograde from your 9th house into your 8th house. So it's going from one sign to another. And this usually is going to indicate that there's an overlap of where we kind of need to retrace our steps, and now 2 areas of our life rather than just one. So we talked about having it retrograde in the 9th house being reconsidering your beliefs, your education on something, maybe not being entirely clear when it comes to your understanding of something and needing to learn more before you move forward. Having it now go into your 8th house as well is saying, okay, now we need to look even deeper when it comes to finances, trust, personal transformation, where we maybe need to let go of a certain version of ourselves before we can fully believe in the things that we want to believe in. Or maybe we need to release a little bit more shame and doubt before we can be this expansive in our vision for our lives. Or maybe there's something where we need to revisit an old relationship in order to further understand like why we think that life works this way or life works that way. In a more literal sense, again, it can be like if you're in school or trying to go back to school or something, you might have thought that like a check cleared or something with finances was all good, and then they're like, no, there was a payment back in June 2021 that needs to be taken care of. It can be a very frustrating overlap with that sort of thing. But I'm thinking too, Mercury rules as a Taurus rising your 2nd house and your 5th house. So this can even be something to do, it's definitely with money or with like romance or something. That has to be what it is. Or even like you can even go as far as to say like creative expansion, your creative skills or something, the depth that's required for you to be successfully creative. But I would say because it rules your 2nd house of personal finances, things that belong to you, your money, your property, things in your name, and then your 5th house being love, sex, romance, pregnancy, children, those things can absolutely be relevant to this Mercury retrograde. Going back to the past, an ex coming back. Oh my God, I thought I couldn't get pregnant. I've been told this whole time I have fertility issues, and now I just found out I'm pregnant. That's a really big, don't worry about that. But that's the sort of thing that can come up here. You are going back to pick up some things that you dropped on the way before we can move forward more efficiently once Mercury goes direct. On the, where are we here? 25th. Venus in your 8th house is going to be trine Neptune in your 11th house. So this is actually a supportive aspect. Sometimes at the very worst, trines, because they are very harmonious, can be like overlooked. It's like they're so good that people like take advantage of it or miss the opportunity that's available there, or something can like kind of get by a little bit too smoothly. But to have that between, what were we looking at? To have that trine between Venus and then your Neptune. This is a very dreamy, romantic, creative, spiritual day as well. I think this is another day to kind of keep an eye on collectively, to just, play the lotto that day, or this is a really good day to like go on like a sip and paint sort of date, or really tap into your faith, your belief systems. It's just very dreamy. So to have this between your 8th house and your 11th house, we just had an aspect that a few days ago on the 17th was like, we need to be a little bit careful here because not everything is exactly what it seems. But now as we reach the 25th, this is a lot more supportive. So if there's something where you can delay it or wait a few days, or something is a little bit fishy, but it's something that you still really care about and want to like enjoy or indulge in, especially if it has to do with your relationships or finances, the 25th is probably a much better, more harmonious day to sort of execute that. But this is really dreamy, positive, creative, spiritual energy, a lot of depth, a lot of intensity between your 8th house of, again, how you overlap with other people in any form, and then your 11th house of your bigger dreams, your manifestations, and how other people can support that. On the 27th, there's going to be a full moon in Cancer in your 3rd house. So full moons are usually going to be endings, full circle moments. It's like the tying up of loose ends, coming full circle. Full moons do not have to be something like awful or bad in any way. It can just be that we're closing a chapter that actually began back in July 17th. That's when we had a new moon in Cancer. This is going to be the full moon that's closing the door that opened back then in the summer. So this can be an ending to something with friendships, short trips, transportation, communication, education, everyday familiar life habits, routines, environments, things like that. The 3rd house really has to do, it makes me think of like your early childhood upbringing and how you're in the same neighborhood for years, you're hanging out with the same friends for years, you're going to the same school for years. It's all the things that are very familiar to you. So when we have a full moon here, that can be like a change in your environment, or maybe there's like something where you're starting to drift a little bit away from like your childhood best friend, or maybe there's even like an exposure of information or very a truth sort of coming to the surface, because the 3rd house is communication, it's using your voice, and having a Mercury retrograde, that's going to be something that is already kind of making communication a little bit fishy. So maybe there's something here where there's like an emotional outburst, or like something that you vulnerably feel now coming out of your mouth and being communicated to somebody. And again, that relevance can kind of call back to then. It can kind of be taking like a short trip, getting around in the city. It can be going on vacation. It could be any sort of change to, again, your familiar environment, your familiar people that are closest to you, and your familiar way of like using your voice, posting on social media, communicating. It can also have something to do with siblings as well, or transportation, so maybe like car issues. On the 27th, Chiron is going to station direct in your 12th house of your psyche, your mental health, your spirituality. It's really a very mystical area of the chart. It's everything that maybe we can't fully see or touch, but that we can feel it. We experience it, therefore it's still real, even if we don't have like physical, tangible evidence to prove it. So this is things like when we have mental health issues, it's having like a nightmare, it is addictions, escapism, vices. It doesn't have to be inherently bad. It can also be your faith. It can be endings. It's like what you kind of tackle in therapy, things like that. So to have Chiron stationed direct here, similarly to Neptune going direct, it's going to be different for everybody across the board. I don't think it's always something that people, feel like it slaps them in the face the day that this transit happens, unless it's touching something in your personal natal placements. But you want to look back to July 23rd. And again, identify in regards to those themes in that area of your life, if there's been any sort of like consistent thing that has been different since that date. And as it stations direct again on December 27th, you might start to see that what was going on around the summer starts to resume, and possibly in a new way. Chiron has a lot to do with wounds and triggers and sensitivities, and where we kind of pour salt in the wound, where something still stings and it's never fully resolved or healed, but it also provides us with the opportunity to heal the things that are very triggering. So to have it stationed direct, if you've been having like an easier time over the summer and you were like, I'm good, I'm over whatever the thing that's been hurting you, you might start to see, okay, maybe I jumped the gun a little bit, and this is something that still kind of stings, even though I thought it didn't the last few months. It can equally be something that is the opposite. Maybe during its retrograde cycle, you had a lot of an opportunity to look inward and to do the work and to go to therapy or to try a new medication or to get out of your comfort zone, to go to a new place that kind of helped you remediate that pain. Again, a lot of it is probably going to have to do with up here rather than physical changes in your life, because it is more mental, it is more psychological, it's more intuitive. It has a lot to do with secrets too, secrecy, deception, manipulation, where there can be mind games being played. It's your blind spots, so where sometimes we can be our own worst enemy and really self-sabotage. So you just want to keep an eye out for those patterns. On the 28th, we have Mercury retrograde in your 8th house, squaring Mars. It's going to be conjunct Mars, and it's going to be square Neptune in your 11th house. So now that Mercury retrograde is in your 8th house, again, it's bringing some need to reconsider any financial dealings, details around our intimacy that we share with other people, information and communication that's maybe more secretive or like shameful or kept on the low down a little bit, that maybe has to do with more taboo or intense matters and how we overlap with other people. Now this is going to be conjunct Mars. So Mars is the planet of action, assertion, aggression, how we go after the things that we want. It's very direct, it's very assertive, it likes to confront things head on. At its very worst, it can be incredibly aggressive, and it can be very frustrated and impulsive and kind of jump the gun and rush through things. So to have a conjunction between how we communicate and how we execute can kind of look like people, going a little bit too hard in the way that they say how they feel about something, or the way that their words are expressed, or even like the way that people are driving around, like having road rage and stuff like that. To have this happening in your 8th house, I feel like if we're looking at the 8th house less in money, property, things that we share with other people, it can have something to do with things that you once buried deep down, especially with Chiron stationing direct the day before, your internal pain, psychological issues, things like that. I think something is like being unearthed that is now coming out. You just had a full moon in your 3rd house of communication, and things sort of surfacing and coming out in an intense way. So I think that this is probably like something that you've been biting your tongue about now is coming out very directly. Something that has been a secret or kind of been rushed under the rug forever is now being confronted in a very direct way. The issue is that it's going to be squaring Neptune again in your 11th house of friends, community, your sense of belonging, the people that you're surrounding yourself with. And it looks like that can kind of indicate that, again, something is not entirely clear. Something is like a little bit deceptive, manipulative, being kept a secret. You don't have all the details. Something isn't adding up. Something isn't making sense. It just seems like there's some fogginess in something like making sense on paper, despite the fact that there's a lot of communication happening. So again, it could be financial. It could have to do with something that other people are like telling you they'll give you, or I do support you, or I do want this for you, or I will help you with this, and it's like not coming through, and you're like, what's going on here? Why aren't these things adding up? And it can have a lot to do with, again, like someone that you're intimate with, or someone that you're kind of in cahoots with or in a partnership with, and maybe other people being able to kind of see what's going on but not directly telling you about it. I don't want to cause any paranoia either and be like, oh, everybody has it out for you. I know a lot of tarot readers and astrologers try to make it sound like, someone's always trying to ruin your life behind the curtain. I don't think it always has to be so malicious. I think it will sort itself out literally as we get into the new year, once Mercury stations direct into 2024. So I would just say for right now, communicate how you feel clearly. I'm not going to tell you to like not say how you feel, but I wouldn't act too permanently on something that maybe you don't see the full picture of yet, because it's very likely to change until Mercury goes direct. On the 29th, Venus is going to enter your 8th house. So it's now going to be adding its energy into the 8th house, where you just had, what have we been talking about there? Was it Mercury retrograde? Yeah, that Mercury retrograde kind of dipped its toes in there. You have the sun in there. So now Venus is going to warm up this area. I like when Venus is in the 8th house. It's typically going to look like other people wanting to give you stuff, or kind of like bring some ease and comfort to, again, building intimacy, building trust, and building like positive sex experiences. This is really good for that. But it can also be that other people are giving you money, other people are giving you gifts. It's right around Christmas, so maybe you'll get a really good Christmas gift this year, or maybe somebody will grant you some sort of like financial blessing of some sort. Venus rules your 6th house of work and routine, and it's also your chart ruler. Hello, you're a Taurus rising, so anything that Venus does is going to be extra prominent for you. Your 1st house of self and identity, your 5th house of, or I'm sorry, your 6th house of work, routine, your everyday lifestyle, all those things. There might be something that's getting a little bit easier due to the fact that maybe you're making more money, or you're getting more help, or there's something that has been granted legally, contractually, financially, or something like that, that is, you know, taking its foot off your neck a little bit. It looks like there's an ease and pressure in this area of the chart. On the 31st, the very last day of 2023, I can't believe it, Jupiter is going to be stationing direct in your 1st house of self, identity, who you are and what you look like. This is like the most incredible way to end the year for you, Taurus. You're the main character here with Jupiter being in your 1st house for, another like 6 months as we get into May. Jupiter being like blessings and growth and abundance, having this go through your 1st house is usually like a winning streak energy. I can like prominently think of when I had Jupiter in my 1st house. Granted, like it was years ago, so the astrology was definitely different in a lot of different ways, but I was like the happiest I've ever been. I looked the best ever. I was making the most money. Like I loved having Jupiter go through my 1st house. So I think you guys having it stationed direct again over the last few months, it's been retrograde since September 9th. If there's been any sort of setbacks, or, you know, you're overspending, or you feel like you're functioning in excess and you're not making things back, or you're not getting your assets or your resources or your energy replenished, it's likely to kind of open the floodgates on the last day of the year, where everything that Jupiter tends to bring us, gifts, opportunities, abundance, things like that, come in now a lot more smoother, rather than since September, which hasn't been that long, but can sometimes drain us of those things because we're using so much and not growing enough back. And again, with that being yourself, who you are as a person, it can be usually a lot of opportunities rather than just cold hard cash, but it is in Taurus, so it could be financial as well. I think this is also interesting because it's going to station direct at 5 degrees, which is the same degree that we actually had the lunar eclipse in Taurus on in your 1st house on October 28th. So we had a lunar eclipse in your 1st house that was actually very much a big deal at the very end of October. This was closing the door to a cycle that began way back in very late 2021. In like November, December of 2021, the door opened to what was like a 2-year cycle of there being a lot of immense changes to who you are as a person in a very fated, like intense karmic way. For better or for worse, this can look like a lot of breakups. It can look like a lot of relationship drama. There was probably a lot of things over the last 2 years for you that built you into an entirely new identity. And it could have even look through the vessel of having an identity crisis, and to now have Jupiter stationing at the same degree that we had the lunar eclipse on, the full closing of the door on October 28th, closing out that cycle. I think that this is very much a baton pass of like, you close out one version of yourself because you're letting in something in so much bigger, or whatever you've let go of at the time, like whether that be a relationship, a job, a living situation, something that was probably supporting like a very foundational aspect of who you are as a person. Whatever kind of has left over the last 2 years for you, I think is now being replenished with something far more valuable, and something that gives you a lot more room to grow and to expand and to really step into more of like an authentic version of yourself. So I'm excited for you. I think this is going to be a really good way to kick off the year, even if, you know, I know some Taurus risings out there have been struggling because naturally the South Node is going through your 7th house of relationships over the last few years as well. I'm a Scorpio rising, so I have the flip of what you guys are going through, and it has not been easy. It's been very rough. So I think that this is a celebratory time to be like, okay, we did it, and now the cardinal signs get to deal with the hellscape that we were dealing with the last few years. But I hope that this helped you. I hope that, you know, it gave you a sense of value. You can subscribe to my Patreon or book a personal reading or get an ebook, anything that you would like. All the information that you need is going to be in my bio at KMONEY.biz. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.